Welcome to Quick Flicks. I feel like we are getting into a golden age of new filmmakers coming out recently. People like Bo Burnham, Greta Gerwig, Jonah Hill, Ann Lupo, and Bradley Cooper all have come out of the woodwork to give audiences their first directed feature films. But out of all the new blood, one name has been on everyone's mind: Ari Aster. For those not in the know, Hereditary from last year was directed by Ari Aster and was responded to with mixed to positive reviews. I quite enjoyed Hereditary, and it truly made me existentially paranoid. The very concept that we are all part of a game that was set up even before we were born just chilled me to the bone. But what is scarier for a budding filmmaker like Ari Aster is what is deemed the sophomore slump. Midsommar was released last week, and I did see it opening week, along with Spider-Man Far From Home. Stay tuned for that video. In any case, you've either have seen it by now or heard about it by now, so without further ado, let's delve deep into the spoilers, or as deep as I can really go. Midsommar is an odd film to think about in retrospect, not because it's bad or anything, quite the contrary. The cinematography, musical score, the setting, the costume design are all instantly iconic. The gore effects were especially disturbing and effective at times, and the trippiest balls visual effects are pleasingly enjoyable to watch. But what is odd about the film to me is how cardboard it kind of felt. I can tell there were attempts at deep emotions considering the lead character's Danny's emotional turmoil in the post-trauma mindset, especially when Danny's boyfriend clearly isn't fully there to support her in her sort of depression state. If it is one complaint that I have, is that all of the characters have barely any depth to them, and are only used as a placeholder to get to themes that I feel anyway were perfected in Hereditary. How we process grief as a theme was more explored better, and so much more in depth by Toni Collette's character in Hereditary. Now, if it's one thing that I can't get angry at with this film, is what it's really about. The film itself is a critique of cultural bias through our lead character's perspective and how Ari chooses to shoot certain ceremonies. It's as if Ari wants to challenge us to see if we could stand and acclimate to the culture or try to call out the traditions displayed to us as tourists. Part of the sense of cultural bias does come from where and how we are raised. For example, we come from a society that treasures freedom of speech and equality for all. But if we go to, say, Saudi Arabia, we begin to wonder why they are on the Council for Human Rights at the United Nations. This gets especially pointed out in the first fucked up scene of the film, when two old people jump off a cliff in a circle of life type of ceremony, where some British people take offense to that display. Another example comes from Will Poulter's character, as he, quite ignorantly, pees on a sacred tree full of ancient people's ashes. According to Aster's own words, this film is about a breakup between two people in a toxic relationship, and I can kinda understand that. There are certain dream sequences where we see Danny suffocating on black clouds, both as a symbol of her depression from her sister's murder-suicide at the start of the film, and of the choking claustrophobic relationship she is in with Christian, her boyfriend. I will say the one thing that surprised me with this film is not the gore or graphic nudity in a scene of drug-induced sex, but Aster's decision to blatantly spoil the entire film in the first frame. Not only that, but he also decides to spoil the turn in Christian's story on a tapestry. This is only scratching the surface of what can be called an extremely pretentious film, and I can understand it since this whole video has become a small discussion of my fondness for the film's pretentiousness. Midsommar is not a perfect movie. Like I said, the characters are just placeholders for themes and not characters in their own right. It is derivative of other films, but it does so in its own way, and not everyone will be enamored by the graphic violence and nudity. Seriously, 10 minutes before the film's first sacrifice sequence, an old couple just left thinking it was going to be a boring movie. Regardless, Aster should pat himself on the back, as he has now made two films that will become discussed for years to come. I give this film a 7 out of 10 and a recommendation if you need something new.